Hey everybody, it's Norm from Tested.
And it's Jeremy from Tested.
Welcome to Projections, our show about virtual reality, augmented reality, and emerging technologies that are going to change the way we experience the world. And one of the reasons VR is so compelling today as a consumer technology is because I think they've passed the threshold for presence.
Presence.
I think it's a topic that's worth talking about.
That's a word that we've been hearing about ever since the Oculus DK1 came out. People started talking about this word presence. So how would you define presence in the VR context?
I think one of the ways I would define presence is that when I put on the headset, I believe that my body is in a virtual space. And it doesn't need to be a photorealistic space or even a real space, like with logic and physics of the world that I live in and we live in here, but that I believe that my body, not in my head and maybe my arms, are in that space.
Right. Famously, one of Valve's very first test chambers was a plank that you'd walk out over, a humongous drop that dropped you onto basically a screenshot of Safari or something like that, of Chrome. I mean, it was clearly unreal. There was nothing about it that would make you believe this is a real environment, but it was terrifying by all accounts. And that is what you're talking about, right?
So I do think there are two aspects to that. One is that environment you're talking about, the environment being believable and being responsive the way you would experience it.
To your lizard brain.
To your lizard brain.
Not necessarily your rational brain.
Right.
Yeah.
And then the other part is your sense of self, proprioception.
Right, proprioception.
Right, your lizard brain's understanding of your relationship between your body. If you close your eyes, you have a sense of where your arms are, where your legs are, how you interact with the world as you know it. And increasingly, with more of your body being able to be tracked in VR, first with your head, with the VR headset, and now with these motion controllers, we are increasing the sense of proprioception.
That's interesting, because I would have thought when we first got our first taste of the DK1, which only had rotational tracking, like there was not even positional tracking for your head in space. I would have thought that I called that immersion, I called that presence at the time, and I suppose I would have even said that I felt like my head was in the world and that I had proprioception of that. But I wonder if now, as we've added positional tracking to our head and then hand controllers, I wonder if the requirements for immersion have gone up. Because now when I put on a Gear VR, I feel like if I move my head, I'm out of it.
Right. Yeah, so it seems like there is a sliding scale based on your experience of it. But if you use that same Gear VR and give it to someone who's never used a VR headset of any time, they would still feel immersed and they feel like that would be great. So we are at a point where on the consumer side, we have at least 3 points tracked. We have our head and we have each of our hands. But even the software represents that differently. Like the motion trackers that Hollywood uses, they track multiple points of your body. But the software for a lot of video games have to either not show the other parts of your body or abstract that.
Oh, the software for games that represent myself in VR. That's right. Early on, Valve was really a strong proponent of only showing what's tracked. A lot of people were trying to put in the full body, connect the hands to the arms to the head. And the best solution that they suggested was just show what's tracked. And that's why we see in Job Simulator floating hands in front of our faces. And we show the head, but that's it, just those 3 things. Some people have experimented with, inverse kinematics and that, which would allow you to make a best guess as to where those body parts are, but without tracking.
Yeah, based on just our understanding of how joints work and how people naturally behave. And at that point, you do have more data points than 3 points. You have the height of the person.
True.
And with some of these controllers, you have where your fingers actually lay. So increasing the number of points tracked gives the software engineer more information to abstract things. But then there's also the question of whether we need to have these things visually represented.
Right, and I keep coming back to what I just said. I still am in the camp of just show what's tracked. The best example I have seen so far was Lone Echo. Unfortunately, that's not publicly available yet, but they have a really, really strong IK model where the full body is tracked, and when you're flying through space, my feet aren't anywhere near my feet. They're like back there because
your virtual feet.
Naturally, they'd be floating behind me.
Right.
And I think that that's super cool, and it might make sense for multiplayer because you kind of have to have that for that game.
But your lizard brain believes it.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm fine with it. Honestly, though, my lizard brain would be just as immersed if there was no body representation besides what's being tracked.
Well, there are also now technologies as a part of VR, consumer VR, that are going to allow more parts of your body to be tracked. Most notably, the HTC Vive Steam VR trackers that they're releasing later this year. Now, at GDC, we chatted with Cloudgate Studios, their game developer, and they've been using the HTC Vive trackers to allow virtual avatars to be created in their game, Island 359. So let's jump to that interview right now.
So I'm Steve, I'm president of Cloudgate, and what you're seeing here, what we're working on today is we call it our virtual self system. Everybody's been talking about the legends of VR, like Stevenson, William Gibson. We've all been taught we wanted to see ourselves in virtuality, and we had an idea over a year ago that this would be possible if we had the tracking pucks to do it. And so when Vive announced the tracker program, we immediately got to work using our extensive mocap backgrounds to try and prototype this system using just controllers, and then that got us through the tracker program to receive the trackers. So what we've done is we've taken 3 of the HTC Vive trackers, and we've created some custom mounts to make it super easy to put them on your body. And now, through our system and in our game currently, you can see your whole body in VR now. Your foot position, your knee position, your hips position, chest, elbows, hands, all 9 yards, right? If it's part of your body, you'll see it in VR, and it should accurately track your position.
Let's talk a little bit about your motion capture background. When you guys are making volumetric motion capture systems for film, for games, what is important to the producers? What type of data are you capturing versus what's important when you're in a game for a user, and where do you fill in the holes where when you have 3 or 5 points of tracking here, or 6 points of tracking here versus how many you have for motion tracking?
So when we're doing, the motion capture data in our old careers and this, the most important thing you can get is the sub-millimeter accuracy of the tracked human being. Vive already provides that in the HMD and the controllers, and it turns out that trackers are also sub-millimeter accurate. It's just as accurate as, a Vicon or an OptiTrack or a motion analysis, motion capture system, right? It's just using a little bit of a different technique. It's not optical. This is, the laser-based with the sensors.
Which gives you real-time feedback.
Exactly. Yeah, it's so we can actually see this data in real time and provide it back to your body in real time, which we haven't ever been able to see happen before. So that's why we were so excited about it. That we were like, wait, we can do this with next to no latency added to the game to show you where you are, and the consumer just has to grab a tracker on one of these easy plates. They don't need a shirt. They don't need bulky gloves. They don't need pants. They don't need mocap markers all over their body or anything silly. It's just wear what you're wearing now, clip this stuff on, start the game, and you're good to go.
So how many points are you tracking? How does it compare to if you had a perfect idealized mocap system? How many points would you be tracking? And what are the important points that you want to track so you can complement the rest of it with IK?
Right. So in a typical full-featured motion capture rig, there's really about 23 points on the human body that you want to make sure that you're tracking perfectly. We know we're not going to get there with using this technology. It's too expensive and it's too bulky, but using our experience of human kinematics and IK rigging and things like that, we figured we could get a really, really close proximity, get just past that uncanny valley of body motion, using just 6 points of tracking and filling in the gaps with what we know the human body does. For the most part, your knee will only be in one position if we know where your foot and your hips are, because of the way that the knee solves. Elbows are a really huge ball of wax. They're really complicated. You can do strange things with your elbows because of the way your clav works to your shoulder, and the fact that your wrist can rotate more freely than your ankle can. So elbows are really hard, and we're still working on our elbow solve, but we feel like we're pretty close. And we'll just put your elbows in an idealized position, right? We're never going to be able to track your elbows one-to-one with where your real elbows are, but we could probably fool you into thinking the rest of your body's one-to-one. So long as the elbows look good and they're really close to what you're doing, and you're not actively trying to break it, you're just being natural in VR, it'll look great.
So, and also the important thing here is for the user, for the person wearing the headset and what their own sense of body in the game. Unless it's a game where you're looking at a mirror the entire time, it's only certain things that the user is going to care about in terms of interaction and awareness for presence. What are those things, and how you design your game to be able to adapt to accommodate kicking and having your hips tracked?
Right. So for single player stuff like we're doing now, you're right. Like looking down is really the only time you're going to see your body if we don't give you the mirror. And there's no mirrors in the jungle, so it's really only when you look down. But to make this work right, we have to make it look right from third-person perspectives, which is why we use the mirror. That when you look down, it's very different from a traditional PC game, that the first-person view and the third-person view of the multiplayer are always two different views. Right now, we're giving the exact same view, that when you look down at your body, your body's doing the same thing that somebody's going to see from outside. It's like, it's virtual reality for a reason, right? It's like the same thing with reality. I look at you and I see you standing here. If you look down, you would see the same pose from your perspective, and that's how we're accomplishing it. That we try to make it as close to one-to-one with what your body's really doing. Eventually down the road, possibly with this game, most likely with our next game, we'll want to incorporate this into a multiplayer facet of the game. And so you'll be able to see other people running around using this system, and you'll see their body language exactly. If they're hiding in cover, right? If they're standing, if it's a social thing, you'll know their attitude, how they're standing. You'll be able to like convey some emotion. So
as a game developer, because you now have sub-millimeter accuracy for things like your feet and your hips, does it change the type of games you want to make? Do you care more about near field, close interaction, careful interaction games, more than far shooting games and wider expanses?
I think for us right now, the thing that this is buying us is just more presence and more purchase from the person who's in VR. I believe the scientific term of seeing your controller floating in your hand in VR and you believing that's where your arm is called proprioception, if I'm getting the term right. So what this does is it actually eliminates the need for your brain to process that, and you're just going to start seeing it's like, this is my hand, this is my forearm, this is my torso, this is my knee, and this is my thigh. And it's creating a little bit more of an emotional purchase. So if we put you in a stressful situation, it just got a little more stressful because now this thing's not just biting near you, it's trying to gnaw your actual leg, right? And the position your real leg is at. And that's like crazy interesting. It's creating, like we're seeing some interesting emotional responses from people who are playing with it this way. Gameplay mechanics wise, it's obviously fun to kick things now that you can see your legs, but there's some neat, like almost real world repercussions in game from having your body realize. We actually just put collision on the entire thing. So now if you go back and watch our old tests, I can actually like push drums with my elbow. So if you're trying to hide and you turn and you bump something, it's going to make noise and clatter and fall over, right? That you can't just like wade into the middle of a table now, and because now your body's there and you can just knock the table over and knock everything over on the table. So there's definitely there's more purchase in the suspension of disbelief that you're in this real world.
Do you see this more as a gamer or consumer tool, or are you also thinking about using this to replace, be a cheap motion capture system for professionals, so they can make their own content? Because you're asking people to buy 3 trackers at $100 each, plus the mounting accessory you guys are making.
Right. So we're not really chasing after the motion capture side of things because there's, I don't know how much of a market there is for that. And there's other teams that are doing that now using the similar solves that we are, but with a more robust solve that would cause latency in real time in VR. We're going to just let them handle that. We don't really have an interest in chasing that down. We're really more about the consumer feel and being in virtual reality with it. The nice thing about it is that we're not forcing anybody to buy the 3 trackers to experience this. If you only have 1 tracker, which I think is probably going to be most of the market, they're going to maybe grab 1 to track the new toy or whatever they want. They can put it on their belt and they can get some hips tracking, right? We'll give you like your torso down to your like pelvic cradle so that you'll at least see, like if you lean around a corner and you look down, you'll see your torso leaning, right?
It's scalable that way.
Exactly. We're going to try and do it in a scalable system. If you have 2 trackers, we'll recommend just put them on your feet. And that was how we did our first test. We only had hands and feet tracked and not hips. And so we were doing all this procedural solve on the hips. Like if you crouched, we know that to maintain the proper pose and balance, when we crouch, we drive our butts backwards to maintain our center of gravity. Because it's how our legs want to work. And so we were just doing that so that even if you didn't have the hips tracker on, if you crouched, it would at least look right. You're not going to see super robust stuff. If they kneel and things like that, it might look a little janky, but it'll be scalable. If you only have 2, you'll still be able to kick things and you'll see your feet, And then if you have 3, obviously you'll get this experience where your whole body is going to be tracked.
And how far away are people from able to buy something like this and play the game?
So our understanding is that they ship to consumers, like retail purchasable. I think Q2 has been the description, so we don't know exactly what that date is. I do believe March 27th is the date that developers could purchase trackers for use in, outside of the initial program. So hopefully this summer.
And same for the mounting clips in the game you're making now?
Yeah, we'll have our clips ready to go around whenever the same time the retail launch of the trackers is. So yeah, we definitely want to be day and date with track release. We'll have this updated in our game, so you'll be able to buy trackers and then buy our tracker clips and jump in the game and see your whole body working.
Okay, Jeremy, what did you think of that demo? You used it as well as I used it.
Yeah.
We had 3 of these Vive trackers, and while we had previously used them before, I used them before in tracking accessories, peripherals.
Guns and such.
Guns, baseball bats.
Right.
This is the first time I had them attached to my body. In this case, 2 tied tightly to my sneakers, and 1 put on a belt behind me, or if any belt you'd be wearing, behind you in your lower back.
It's strong. You start out in a mirror room where you can try things out, and just about everything I tried to do, bending my knees, doing karate kicks, trying to obscure the controllers in various ways worked quite well.
Now they are using an IK model still, because they're
yeah.
not tracking elbows, they're not tracking knees. There are a lot of assumptions that they're making, but CloudGate's president, Stephen, was telling me how they have a mocap background. And at some point, they feel like these 6 points of tracking, it's enough for you to create a believable avatar. Now, it allows you to do things like kick in games.
That's the best part for me, was being able to kick the dinosaurs. I don't know if this game is the best exploitation of this technology, though.
I felt the same way.
Because I want a game where kicking is a real part of it. I want to play soccer.
Or a game where the position of your feet, the Temple of Doom game, where walking around a room scale environment where I put my feet on a tile would actually be the game. There are games like Unseen Diplomacy, where
that's interesting.
Where you have to navigate in a room, but because that game doesn't track your body, it only tracks your hands and your head.
But you are avoiding lasers in such ways.
Yeah, exactly.
They could certainly do a Temple of Doom style thing where you have your feet really matters.
Yeah, that's what I really wanted out of this tracking technology. But it seemed to me, with chatting with CloudGate, what they cared more about was the representation of your body, of being able to add collision detection, where if you have a full modeled body, you crouching behind a bush and disturbing the foliage would allow for the AI to see you.
Or hear you.
Or hear you.
Right, yeah. No, I get that. That's cool, that's interesting. And even in a soccer game, I would think that would actually play in as well. But when I played, my IK model totally broke down. I don't know what happened. It lost tracking of the rear sensor for some reason. But it was funny because my body was now just a jumbling, thing of mush at my feet. But I was still just as into the experience because I could still kick the dinosaurs. Like that was what the whole point of that demo was to me, was to see what foot presence is like in VR. And I still got that. So I come back, I left that demo with my same, feeling as before, which is that showing just the tracked parts gives you is really the immersion factor.
Now I think there are 2 different things there. There's the immersion, the believability that the avatar you're seeing is your body.
Yeah.
That's the foot presence aspect. And there's also the action, the verb that adding an additional track point in your body allows, in this case, kicking.
Right.
I felt that the kicking was more compelling than seeing the body.
I did too.
And that seeing the body, the visual presence, that it didn't reach that point where it passed the uncanny valley of my avatar.
Right. Oh, I mean, it's certainly further towards that point than I've ever seen before. I mean, it was really impressive to see that level of mocap. It certainly has applications. I just don't know if it's a presence amplifier. I get proprioception from my body all the time, even if it's not shown in VR. I want to physically avoid contact with projectiles, or I feel like I'm going to get hit if anything goes through my body.
Yeah. So a lot of the games right now where they're not expecting your body to be tracked, you can fool the game by just you don't have to move your body. You just move your hand and the headset, and it thinks your body has moved because your feet aren't tracked. So as we have more points tracked, and it's going to be more accessories required. It's going to be, even the Manus VR gloves are going to require that each glove have one of these trackers. Right. It's going to increase the costs, and it's going to diminish the pool of people who have access to these, which means that the games have to be scalable. They have to work even if you don't have any of these additional points tracked.
And the VR glove guys, they're not even focusing on consumers yet.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I'm glad that people are working on this problem for sure. It's certainly a unique experience to see my body actually tracked in VR. And I know that there's going to be implications for people who are doing any kind of mocap work.
Animation.
I mean, there's professional people, and also people there's always your machinima artist that just wants to make cool stuff with video game engines. This is going to be like a killer app for these guys.
Well, when we come back, something that's already kind of a killer app, at least among our social circles. But first, this. So Jeremy, the game that we've been playing, probably playing the most of these days, is Rec Room.
Certainly a multiplayer.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, this is an interesting app. I don't know how these guys are making money. They can't be making money because their app is free. And it's free for Vive and Oculus at this time. And you have to have a motion controller? You have to have hand controllers to use it, is that right?
Yeah, so okay. They're creating a mini version of the metaverse.
Yeah, and it is probably the best that we have so far, at least where that's always going to be populated. There's always people in this app because I don't even know to call it a game because it is free and it's pretty cool. You get into it, you create your avatar, you throw some clothes on, and then you leave your private locker room and you go out to what is ostensibly some kind of gymnasium dormitory hub area. And there's a bunch of different people in there, and you can hear them talking, you can see them performing actions. As you play these various games that are inside here, you level up your character, you open up packages that come to you which can contain new clothes and things. But the best part of this is being able to partner up with your friends.
Literally virtual handshake.
For a handshake to become friends, and then a fist bump to party up. Mm-hmm. And then you go into any of these various games that are available.
Right, and the games are instances that you can think of if you use the video game analogy. Now, in that locker room, that hub area, there's a lot of interactivity. There's a little basketball hoop, you can play ping pong, there are accessories you can pick up, and it becomes a real social space. It's not a ton of people, it's just I think a dozen or so.
But there are also instances of that hub. So that's not the total number of people playing at any one time. So it can be a little tricky to sync up with your buddy. If you both go into the hub and you don't see each other, you've got to leave and go back in.
And there's definitely some interesting, I would say, social interactions that you can bear witness to when you're in Rec Room. But really, the thing that's more compelling to you and me, I believe, are the actual instance games.
Oh, very much so.
So there's disc golf, there's paintball, and most recently, we've been loving the quest mode.
Yeah, I think, who's to say how much time they spend on these? They all kind of have this intentional low-budget vibe to them, where the environments, they're not, amazing out of this world. They're all very low poly, and the textures are very flat, and you can tell that it's fantasy, low budget. But
even the level design it's simplistic.
Right. So for the other games, they went with that, and when you play disc golf, you're in this low budget, kind of low poly outdoor environment that has these chained disc goals, and you throw your disc and you try to hit them.
And you teleport around, move
Right.
to the next area.
And it's cool, but it's definitely got this kind of aesthetic to it. So they embraced it in a new way with this quest mode that I think is part of its success. So they said, okay, we're doing low budget. Let's do the quest mode as if a high school put on a play or created an amazing haunted house in a medieval fantasy kind of environment,
Yeah,
right?
they expanded on the locker room, and now you go into the school,
Right.
the theater department, and 4 people can team up, party up, and go on a quest, which is not easy. I don't think we've actually beat it.
No, the quest?
Yeah.
It's stupidly hard. No, it's crazy hard. But it's so frustrating because you want to go back and play it. So you go on a quest with 4 of you. It starts out relatively easy. You have 2 swordmen and 2 bows, but you can later change your weapon. You find whatever you want. And it starts out with basically like these Dalek kind of characters that roll towards you, and you hit them with the sword or hit them with the bow. And then there's these flying creatures, and they can shoot 1 fireball at you. But eventually, you get ones that can shoot 5 fireballs at you, and Daleks that move really fast.
And you need to shoot them in the back. So it requires definitely a level of skill.
Yeah.
But the thing that I love most about it is that social aspect. It really harkens back to the MMO dungeon crawl.
Totally.
Even if it's 4 people, in VR, extremely compelling, even when it's random people that you're playing with.
It's extremely compelling. I mean, having the voice and hearing everyone's intensity and trying to work together to something that may look low budget, but actually has this difficulty ramp that is pretty well done. It's very, very successful.
And they didn't need to make an overly complex dungeon.
No.
Like it's beautiful in its aesthetic.
Right.
But all the natural benefits that the game gets from social interaction, just giving people a purpose, and giving them the tools, a sword, a shield, a bow and arrow that everyone as a gamer gets. Like, we've played with people where we didn't have to actually communicate with them, but the rules of the game were so simple that we still had fun knowing that that was a real person that we were playing as our companion.
Mm-hmm. And when you die, you can become revived, but you have to have a live friend come over to you and give you a high five.
Yeah.
Which may sound easy, but in some cases, it's not. And that's why we haven't won yet.
I mean, this is the kind of game that makes me want that MMO dungeon crawler in VR.
World of Warcraft?
World of Warcraft in VR. This is the first taste of what that experience
I think you're right.
is
That
gonna be
like the metaverse is what we all want from VR, and that's probably what that's going to look like. And this is that first taste.
All right, so Rec Room, it's out on Steam VR in addition to being in the Oculus Store, and there's cross-platform compatibility, and it's available now. We'll be back next week with another episode of Projections, another interview and discussion. But if you have games or hardware that you'd love for us to check out, please post them in the comments below or send us an email. Our information's on tested.com. Until then, Jeremy and I, we'll see you next time.
Bye.